So hello and welcome to today's video. So unless you're watching this video in prison, right now you can go wherever you want. Go for a walk, go for a drive, go halfway across the country, go to a completely different country, whatever. But when you're playing a game, you're always confined to a very specific area. Of course you can always leave these levels and go into other ones, but one thing is true is you are stuck in these areas, you can never truly leave. The developers always have ways to make sure you stay put. Sometimes death zones which may or may not kill you instantly, impossible pits that look like you can jump over them but you never can, invisible or insanely high walls, just something so the developers want to ensure you are staying in this playground. And this even applies to the open world genre as well, which is often praised for the complete freedom it gives the player. Games like Cyberpunk, GTA, Saints Row, you are still confined to a specific area. Like GTA itself is usually based on a real city, but is always set on an island that you're pretty much stuck on. It might be set in America, but you can't go from a drive from Los Santos to GTA's version of Texas. Of course, coming back down to earth and being realistic, the reason it's like this is because, one, these games are set in a very specific place. And of course, hardware limitations. If you're expecting to see a one-for-one recreation of America, Russia, or Europe, you ain't getting it in this lifetime, I can say that much. But regardless of this, people always want to explore more of their favourite games, for a variety of different reasons. Like when I was younger and I used to play a lot of COD Zombies, I always used to think to myself about the surrounding areas that you could always see outside of in Black Ops and World at War. Like outside the theatre in Kino, the surrounding maps in Verrückt, and I always thought about how great it'd be to get out of these buildings and take on zombies in the fields and the roads. And I know people have had similar thoughts about other games too. People wondering if they can get to Rico Harbour from the top of Bianco Hills in Super Mario Sunshine, somehow leave the Commonwealth in Fallout 4, or even just simple things like getting out the mall in Dead Rising and exploring Willamette in its entirety, seeing as you do fly over the town during the intro. So one of the most annoying experiences I've ever had with this was all the way back in Tony Hawk's Underground. Now Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 4 was my first entry in the Pro Skater series, so I knew the levels are always constricted to a specific area. But for whatever reason, in Tampa and Tampa only, there's a portion of the level where you can see a bridge. But when you get close to it, it throws itself up so you can't get past. And when you go away, it lowers itself. Rinse and repeat. I believe this is the only level out the entire Tony Hawk series that does this kind of trope too, at least to my memory. Now if you went to either side of the bridge on a fuzzy CRT TV in like 640 by 480 quality, it legitimately looked like there was another area across that bridge. Not so much when you're replaying the level on PC in 4K, but you get the point. I spent far too long trying to figure out what I needed to do to cross that bridge, and find out what other parts of Tampa I was missing. Some of the things I tried were trying to find a vehicle. I don't even remember if Tampa had a vehicle, but yeah, Tony Hawk's Underground let you drive cars. So did I need a car? I don't know. I tried to jump it with a moon gravity cheat, and while I did get across it, I wasn't thinking right and ended up straight in the water. Or did I need to pick up some insane speed and actually beat the bridge before the angle was too high? I tried so many things to get across that bridge and failed every single time, and it annoyed me to no end. I just wanted to see what was across that bridge in Tampa. And this of course is not the only game that has these weird, enticing, playable looking areas. And every single one of these shares something in common, and that is no matter how hard you try, there is no way to get over there, and that's what makes it quite enticing. Of course there are many ways to get out of bounds, be it through modding or glitching, which are the two most common methods, and that's when it becomes extremely interesting. More often than not, people love going out of bounds to regain access to areas that were only used once. Like in GTA San Andreas, one mission takes place in Liberty City, and you can fly into one area only. And once you kill the last guy, it instantly teleports you back to the main map. But thanks to glitching and cheating, you can get out the building and explore as much of Liberty City as you want. Until you realise most of it lacks collision and this is not the GTA 3 map. But still, people really enjoyed exploring this place for what it's worth. And one of the most enticing things about exploring out of bounds areas has to be finding new, entirely playable areas in some way that were undoubtedly cut from the game. Like how in the PS1 Spyros, there were glitches that let you swim in the air. And in one level, Dino Mines, you can access an unused boss fight arena. There's nothing to do in it of course except leave, but still it was an entirely unused area that you've never seen before. In a similar manner, when Spider-Man 2 released on the PlayStation, glitchers found a secret room that may or may not have belonged to a future DLC. Point being is, when often these kind of secret areas always get found, they always spark some discussion in the fanbase. Like when it was found in Spider-Man 2, people were discussing if this area would have been home to a possible DLC, or a completely originally cut storyline, or whatever. And it doesn't even have to be a big area. It can be a button, a weapon, or an NPC, and it can be quite a neat finding, and developers sometimes have a bit of fun with these. Developers know people are always going to try and break their games regardless, so you might as well have a bit of fun with it. The Witcher 3 has a very nice picture of the entire development team located out of bounds, which is a very nice homage, and quite fitting since it doesn't interfere with the main themes and aesthetics of the main Witcher map. And for quite a few people, going out of bounds helps give a bit of perspective on how the game works as a whole. Not necessarily exploring the map and finding out these cut areas, but just getting an insight into things you wouldn't normally see, or figuring out how the developers may have used tricks and illusions to create the world you're currently playing in. I've seen a few comments from game developers who mention they love going out of bounds solely to see this stuff, and I'm not a developer so I cannot comment any examples, but one I personally like is the demo for Silent Hill PT when it's revealed that Lisa is always following you, and you never see it because of the way it's programmed, and I sometimes wonder if this was done as a way to intentionally give modders a bit of a bonus scare. Like, I can maybe imagine that the developers did that so when modders were messing around with FreeCam, that'd be one of the very first things they see. But sometimes you can also see just how much detail and craft the team put into their maps. There may be buildings that you never see the top of, but they go ahead and model them anyway, or areas behind walls where they just put a lot of vegetation that makes the out of bounds areas look much more complete than they really do. It's just small things like that show how much effort they really put into these games. They don't want it to look like a mess unless you're getting really far away from the levels. And demos also have their fair share of people who try to get out of bounds as well. Even if the maps might be the same, for a lot of beta hunters, getting out of bounds in the demo might unveil all kinds of different changes. In the demo for Crash of Insanity, there's the area that bridges Insanity Island together, but it's clearly completely different. And getting over the island helps you explore an early and very incomplete area that has the farm. And speaking of that, sequence breaking is also a thing. Getting out of bounds might let you skip some triggers and mess the game up itself in some way. I don't have a very specific game in mind when I say this, but in some games you might have a character join you, or you might be given a weapon, and sequence breaking might let you skip that, and then you can kind of see how the game gets messed up. And I guess this may also apply to speedrunning. Personally, I don't really care much for that, but I know going out of bounds would let you skip major parts of the game and beat it quicker. Or, you might end up giving yourself a massive challenge by reaching a boss fight about a specific item you need, or an ally, or whatever. And exploring out of bounds is actually what birthed quite a few old hoaxes, like how in Pokemon about Mew being under the truck stems from somebody messing around with going out of bounds. And because the majority of people wouldn't have been able to pull it off because you needed a cheat device, or traded Pokemon that knew Surf, they only had what they heard to go off. And this one is very specific, but it only applies to multiplayer games, specifically first-person shooters. Because on quite a few first-person shooters you can get out the map whenever you want, but usually given about 5 or 10 seconds to get your ass back in bounds or you're instantly killed. Though I remember back on the old Call of Duties at least, and it probably still happens today, but people used to love finding ways to get out the map solely to cheat. Being in a place to easily farm kills that's hard to reach you, and yeah, they never lasted long because those games are always constantly updating, but when those glitches were active they were really annoying. And even though I've been yapping for God knows how long, I think it's time to address the elephant in the room, and that is the creepiness that comes of going out of bounds. When you're going out of bounds, you will eventually hit the void, and this is where for quite a lot of people going out of bounds can be extremely creepy, because you're going to the edge of the game world. But when you're going out of bounds in any game, you will hit a point where it just cuts off. You'll be facing a void of nothingness, maybe a skybox, or maybe just pitch black. And I can understand why quite a few people equate going out of bounds hitting that uncanny valley mark, because it's usually just you on your own and you're not supposed to be here. And what makes it extremely off-putting is the lack of detail and general emptiness. For the majority of games, they're always buzzing with some form of life. Even if it's something like Outlast, where you're trapped in a mental asylum full of homicidal maniacs, there's still signs of life in it. But when you're going out of bounds, there's usually never any signs of life at all. And more often than not, the ambience stops entirely. And because no NPCs are supposed to be here, it can feel quite threatening. Even more so when you actually fall off the map. Like ages ago I remember I was messing with a Call of Duty beta build. I'm pretty sure it was Call of Duty 4. But yeah, I was messing around with a beta build on that on the 360 and I was exploring a few maps. And unbeknownst to me, one of the map's collision wasn't finalised, so I was just walking and exploring and then I just fell through the map. And as I was falling into this black void, I remember looking up and seeing the map I was supposed to be on just getting smaller and smaller and smaller, and then it disappeared. And nothing was happening, I was just endlessly falling. And I know this part has taken a bit of a weird turn in the video, but I know quite a few people kind of find these things incredibly scary for that, like an intense fear. But at the same time, these are why boundaries exist to begin with, so you don't see the map you're currently on is just floating in a void of nothing. But what makes Out of Bounds interesting to you? Is it finding cut content? Is it to glitch the game entirely? Or trying to understand the psychological impact that generates fear in some people? Let me know down below. Thank you for watching and have a great day.